The blood-red sun hung low over the parched Montana landscape, as Xavier Holloway counted the carcasses of his cattle for the third time that day. Sweat trickled down his weathered face as he removed his hat and wiped his brow with a bandana that had long since lost its original color. Montana Territory, 1878, and he was watching his dreams slowly die before his eyes. Xavier had spent 5 years building the Double H Ranch outside Florence, Montana Territory. Now, as the worst drought in memory stretched into its second month, his cattle were dropping faster than he could bury them. This was his 3rd year on the land, and it might well be his last. 4 more today, he muttered to his foreman, George Templeton, a gray-haired veteran who'd been with him since Xavier first staked his claim. That makes 22 this week. George nodded grimly, his sun-leathered face betraying nothing but a slight tightening around the eyes. Creek's nothing but cracked mud now. We've got maybe 3 days of water left in the reserve tanks, and that's if we're careful. Xavier replaced his hat, adjusting it against the harsh glare. We'll drive the herd north to Sweetwater Creek tomorrow. It's a day's journey, but word came in from the Sheffield place, George interrupted. Sweetwater's run dry too. Xavier fell silent, staring out at the herd of Herefords grazing listlessly on what remained of the ranch's withered grass. These animals represented everything: his savings, his future, his father's legacy. Samuel Holloway had died believing his son would make something of himself out here in the West, far from their cramped Boston apartment where Xavier had grown up listening to his father's stories of the frontier. We'll dig deeper wells, Xavier declared, though his voice lacked conviction. They'd already dug 3 in the past week, finding nothing but dry soil and rock. The men are talking, George said carefully. Some are wondering if it might be time to sell what cattle we can still drive to market. Xavier's jaw tightened. And sell at panic prices. Most of these steers should bring $15 a head in 3 months. Right now, we'd be lucky to get 5. 5's better than nothing, which is what dead cattle bring. Xavier had no response to that truth. He mounted his chestnut gelding and turned toward the ranch house, a modest 2-story structure built of pine logs that he'd hauled from the distant mountains himself. I'll ride out at dawn, scout farther west. There's got to be water somewhere. George just nodded, both men knowing the odds were slim. As Xavier approached his home, he noticed an unfamiliar wagon parked beside the corral. A sleek bay mare was hitched to it, drinking sparingly from one of their precious water barrels. Irritation flashed through him who would help themselves to his water without permission. He dismounted swiftly, hand instinctively moving to the Colt revolver at his hip. As he approached, the ranch house door swung open and his housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, stepped out, followed by a woman Xavier had never seen before. Mr. Holloway, Mrs. Abernathy called. You have a visitor. This is Miss Lily Calloway from over to Helena. Xavier paused, taking in the sight of the woman. She stood straight-backed and confident on his porch, wearing a practical riding skirt and jacket of deep blue. Her honey-brown hair was pulled back in a simple knot, and her eyes, a striking hazel that caught the dying sunlight, assessed him with equal measure of curiosity and determination. Mr. Holloway, she said, stepping forward with an extended hand. I apologize for arriving unannounced, but I understand you're facing quite the crisis with your cattle. Xavier reluctantly shook her hand, noting the unexpected strength in her grip. Word travels fast, it seems. Miss Calloway, is it? What brings you to the Double H? I represent the Montana Agricultural Society, she replied. I'm surveying the effects of the drought throughout the territory. Your ranch was mentioned as one particularly hard hit. Xavier's pride stung at the thought of being discussed as a failing operation. "We're managing our situation, madam." Something flashed in Lily's eyes, amusement, perhaps. "Yes, I can see that from the cattle carcasses I passed on my way in. Very well managed indeed, Mrs. Abernathy." Made a small noise of disapproval at Lily's bluntness, but Xavier found himself strangely unable to muster the expected anger. There was something refreshingly direct about this woman. "Did you come all this way just to observe our misfortune, Miss Calloway?" "I came to help, Mr. Holloway." She gestured toward her wagon. "I've brought some scientific instruments that may be of use. I specialize in hydrology, the study of water movement through land. If you'll allow me, I'd like to survey your property. There might be water sources you haven't discovered." Xavier's skepticism must have shown on his face because Lily continued, her voice firmer. "Mr. Holloway, I grew up on a ranch in Colorado. My father lost everything in the drought of '65 because he was too proud to accept new methods. I went to college in the East specifically to learn how to prevent such tragedies. Now, are you going to be as stubborn as he was, or will you let me help save your cattle?" The frank challenge in her voice stirred something in Xavier, irritation certainly, but also a reluctant respect. He looked past her to where his remaining cattle huddled in the distance, their ribs increasingly visible, then back to the determined woman standing on his porch. "You can start in the morning," he said finally. "Mrs. Abernathy will prepare the guest room." Lily smiled, and Xavier was struck by how it transformed her face. "I'd have expected nothing less from a man who built all this from nothing. Now, if I could trouble you for a map of your property, I'd like to begin planning tonight." Xavier nodded stiffly and gestured for her to follow him inside. He couldn't help but wonder what this educated, outspoken woman might find that he and his men had missed. Water where there was none. It seemed impossible. But as he watched her confidently stride into his home, Xavier Holloway felt something he hadn't experienced in weeks, a faint, reluctant flicker of hope. The lamp burned low in Xavier's study as he spread the hand-drawn map of his property across his desk. Lily leaned over it, her fingers tracing the lines of creek beds and noting the locations of the failed wells. Xavier couldn't help noticing the delicate curve of her neck as she bent to study the topography, a few escaped tendrils of hair falling forward. "Your property covers quite an expanse," she remarked. "How much of it have you actually surveyed on foot?" "Every inch," Xavier replied, slightly defensive. "I've ridden this land for 3 years." Lily straightened, fixing him with a thoughtful gaze. "Riding over land and reading it are different skills, Mr. Holloway. The signs of underground water aren't always obvious to the untrained eye. And you have this training." He regretted the skepticism in his voice as soon as he saw her expression harden. "I studied at Cornell University under Professor Esdras Williams, the foremost expert on groundwater movement in the country." She tapped the map decisively. "This ridge formation here, have you noticed any difference in vegetation along its eastern slope?" Xavier frowned, considering. "It's greener, I suppose. We assumed it was just shadow from the afternoon sun helping the plants retain moisture." A triumphant smile touched Lily's lips. "That's our first location to investigate tomorrow. Where plants thrive in drought, water is near. Mrs. Abernathy appeared at the doorway, clearing her throat. "Supper's ready. Nothing fancy, just what we could manage with the supplies on hand." "Thank you, Mrs. Abernathy," Xavier said. "Will you join us, Miss Calloway?" "I'd be delighted," Lily answered, following them to the dining room where a simple meal of beans, corn bread, and salted beef awaited. As they ate, Xavier found himself curiously studying his unexpected guest. How does a rancher's daughter from Colorado end up studying hydrology at Cornell? A shadow passed over Lily's face. "My father lost everything when I was 16. He'd built a substantial operation, 3,000 head of cattle, good grazing land. When the drought came, he insisted the rain would return. It didn't. She paused, taking a small sip of water. We watched the cattle die one by one, just as yours are now. My mother had family in New York who took us in after we lost the ranch. I was fortunate enough to receive an education. And your parents, both gone now, she said quietly. My father never recovered from the loss. He blamed himself until the day he died. Xavier nodded, understanding all too well. I'm sorry. Don't be, Lily said, her voice strengthening. His failure became my purpose. I've helped 3 ranches in Montana already this season. The Agricultural Society funds my work as part of their mission to modernize Western farming and ranching practices. And what exactly do you do? Wave a magic wand and make water appear? Xavier couldn't resist asking. To his surprise, Lily laughed, a warm, genuine sound that momentarily transformed the grim atmosphere of the drought-stricken ranch. Nothing so miraculous, I'm afraid. I use science. Geological formations, plant indicators, and soil composition tell stories about what lies beneath the surface. And you believe there's water beneath my land that we haven't found? I don't believe, Mr. Holloway. I know. Her confidence was startling. The question is whether we can access it in time to save your remaining cattle. After supper, Xavier excused himself to check on the herd one last time before dark. When he returned, he found Lily on the porch, notebook in hand, sketching what appeared to be a map of the surrounding terrain from memory. You should get some rest, he said. Tomorrow will be a long day. She looked up, the fading sunlight catching in her eyes. I could say the same to you. You look exhausted. Xavier leaned against the porch railing. Sleep comes hard when you're counting the days until ruin. Lily closed her notebook. How many cattle have you lost? 57 so far. Another 120 are at risk if we don't find water soon. And how many men depend on this ranch for their livelihood? 12 hands, plus George and Mrs. Abernathy. Lily nodded thoughtfully. That's 15 lives tied to yours, Mr. Holloway. 15 reasons not to give up. Something about her straightforward assessment struck Xavier deeply. He'd been so focused on his own failure, his own shame, that he'd almost forgotten the responsibility he bore to others. 16 lives, he corrected quietly. You're forgetting mine. Lily smiled, and for a moment, the weight on Xavier's shoulders seemed to lighten. No, Mr. Holloway, I haven't forgotten yours at all. Dawn broke over the Double H Ranch with a pitiless clarity that emphasized the drought's devastation. Xavier had been up since before first light, checking on the weakest of his remaining cattle. He found Lily already awake, dressed in riding clothes, her instruments packed in a leather satchel. I hope you can ride, Xavier said, nodding toward the stable where his ranch hand Tom was saddling 2 horses. Better than most men I know, Lily replied with a hint of challenge. Xavier surprised himself with a chuckle. I don't doubt it, Miss Calloway. They rode out toward the eastern ridge Lily had identified the previous night. The morning air was still cool, but the cloudless sky promised another scorching day. As they traveled, Xavier pointed out landmarks and boundaries, surprised by Lily's quick understanding of the land's features. Your father taught you well, she observed as they crested a small hill. Xavier glanced at her, startled. What makes you say that, the way you read the land? It's instinctive, like breathing to you. That comes from childhood lessons, not adult learning. He nodded slowly. My father never owned land himself. He was a bookkeeper in Boston, but he studied maps and journals of the West obsessively. He'd quiz me on terrain features, water sources, how to judge good grazing land. I thought it was just a game until I came out here and realized he'd been preparing me my whole life. He must be proud of what you've built. "He died before I claimed this land," Xavier said quietly. "Consumption. His last words to me were, 'Find your piece of sky, son.' I think this is what he meant." Lily studied him with newfound understanding. "Then we'd better make sure you keep it." They reached the ridge by mid-morning. As Xavier had noted, the eastern slope showed markedly greener vegetation. Lily dismounted immediately, removing several instruments from her satchel. "What exactly are you looking for?" Xavier asked, tying their horses to a stunted pine. "Signs of an aquifer," Lily explained, kneeling to examine the soil. "Underground water doesn't just disappear during drought. It recedes, flows deeper, finds new channels." She pulled out a slender metal rod with a handle and began walking slowly down the slope, holding the rod before her. Xavier watched, bemused, as she moved in a methodical pattern. Suddenly, the rod in her hands dipped sharply downward. "Here," she said with quiet certainty. "There's a strong water source beneath this spot." "How deep?" Lily consulted another instrument, a complex arrangement of tubes and gauges. "Not terribly, perhaps 20 feet. She looked up at him, excitement visible in her eyes. "This is promising, but let's continue our survey before deciding where to dig." They spent the remainder of the morning investigating 3 more locations where Lily's instruments indicated potential water sources. By noon, she had marked each spot on her map and ranked them by likelihood and estimated depth. As they sat in the shade of a rocky overhang eating the lunch Mrs. Abernathy had packed, Xavier found himself studying Lily with growing curiosity. "Where did you learn to use those instruments?" "Professor Williams designed several of them himself," she explained. "The dowsing rod is ancient technology, but the pressure gauges and soil density meters are quite modern. The university provided them when the Agricultural Society hired me." "And how many ranches have you saved with your scientific methods?" Something in his tone made Lily look at him sharply. "You're still skeptical." "I'm desperate enough to try anything," Xavier admitted. "But yes, I find it hard to believe that a few metal contraptions can find water where experienced ranchers and cowboys cannot." Lily set aside her plate. "Mr. Holloway, do you believe the world is flat?" "Of course not." "You understand precisely how telegraphy works?" "No," he conceded. "Yet you accept that messages can travel along wires for hundreds of miles in an instant. You accept that the earth is round despite it appearing flat to your eyes." She leaned forward intently. "Science isn't magic. It's simply knowledge you haven't acquired yet. I've studied how water moves through Earth, how it collects, how it signals its presence." Xavier held up his hands in surrender. "Fair enough. So which of your marked locations should we try first?" Lily smiled, clearly pleased by his capitulation. "The second site, near the base of the ridge. The water table is highest there, and the soil composition is ideal for digging." They returned to the ranch by mid-afternoon to organize the necessary equipment and men. George assembled a team of the strongest hands, and by evening they had transported shovels, picks, and timber for shoring to the site Lily had selected. Work began at dawn the next day. Xavier insisted on taking his turn with the shovel alongside his men, digging steadily through the layers of Montana soil. By noon, they had reached 15 feet with no sign of water. "We should be close," Lily assured them, examining the soil being brought up. "See how it's changing texture. Becoming moister." The men exchanged doubtful glances but continued digging. Xavier could sense their growing skepticism, matching his own resurgent doubts. Had he allowed himself to be fooled by a woman with fancy instruments and an impressive education? At 18 feet, one of the men called out, "Boss, the soil's turning dark." Xavier and Lily hurried to the edge of the excavation. Sure enough, the earth being removed now was noticeably damper. Keep going, Lily urged, excitement coloring her voice. We're almost there. 2 feet later, water began to seep into the bottom of the hole. The men gave a ragged cheer as it accumulated, slowly at first, then more steadily. We'll need to shore it properly, install a pump, Lily said, her face flushed with triumph. But this will be enough for your cattle until the rains come. Xavier stared at the gathering water in disbelief. How did you know? Lily's smile held no mockery, only simple pleasure in success. Science, Mr. Holloway, just as I told you. By nightfall, a rudimentary well had been established, with a hand pump bringing clear, cool water to the surface. Xavier arranged for the weakest cattle to be driven to this new source first, while plans were made to dig additional wells at the other locations Lily had identified. As Xavier walked Lily back to the ranch house, both exhausted but elated, he found himself seeing her differently. The skepticism that had colored his initial impression was gone, replaced by something he wasn't quite ready to name. Miss Calloway, he said as they reached the porch, it seems I owe you an apology along with my thanks. Lily paused, turning to face him in the gathering dusk. An apology for doubting your methods, your knowledge. She shook her head. Skepticism is natural, Mr. Holloway. I don't take offense at it. Nevertheless, he insisted, you've saved my ranch, my cattle, the livelihoods of everyone who depends on this place. I don't know how to repay such a debt. In the soft glow of the lantern hanging from the porch roof, Lily's eyes seemed to hold a depth Xavier hadn't noticed before. Perhaps you could start by calling me Lily rather than Miss Calloway. A smile tugged at his lips. Only if you'll call me Xavier. Xavier, she repeated, testing the name. It suits you. Strong. Uncommon. Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition, perhaps, that their connection had evolved beyond professional courtesy. Xavier found himself wondering what would happen when the crisis passed, when Lily's work here was done. The thought of her leaving produced an unexpected hollowness in his chest. Will you stay? He asked impulsively. To oversee the other well sites. Lily's smile was warm with understanding. Yes, Xavier. I'll stay until your cattle are safe. In the days that followed, 2 more wells were successfully dug following Lily's guidance. The cattle, at first weakened by thirst, began to recover their strength. Xavier watched with growing relief as the immediate crisis receded, though the drought itself showed no signs of breaking. Word spread quickly through the territory of the wells at the Double H Ranch. Neighboring ranchers came to see for themselves, skeptical at first but increasingly interested as they witnessed the results. Lily found herself explaining her methods repeatedly, sketching maps of likely water sources on other properties, and promising to visit those hardest hit when her work at the Double H was complete. Xavier observed these interactions with a complex mix of emotions. Pride in Lily's expertise and generosity, gratitude for the salvation of his ranch, and increasingly, a possessive reluctance to share her time and attention with others. One evening, as they sat on the porch after supper, Xavier voiced a question that had been troubling him. What happens when the Agricultural Society sends you to the next drought-stricken ranch? Lily looked up from the book she'd been reading. Are you asking about my future plans? I suppose I am. She closed her book, considering him thoughtfully. The society expects me to continue my survey through the territory until the autumn. After that, I'll return to Helena to compile my findings. And then, another territory perhaps. There's no shortage of drought in the West. Xavier nodded, trying to mask his disappointment. You must find it rewarding helping so many people. I do, Lily agreed. But I sometimes wonder what it would be like to stay in one place, to see the long-term results of my work, not just the immediate crisis resolution. Hope stirred in Xavier's chest. You could do that here. Florence needs someone with your knowledge. The whole territory does. Lily's gaze was searching. Is it the territory that needs me, Xavier, or is it you? The directness of her question caught him off guard, but Xavier found himself unwilling to dissemble. Both, he admitted. Though I find myself increasingly concerned with my own need. A blush colored Lily's cheeks, but she held his gaze steadily. I've learned to be careful about making hasty decisions based on gratitude or other emotions that might arise during crisis. I'm not offering you a position out of gratitude, Xavier said quietly. Though I am grateful, I'm offering because in the short time you've been here, I've come to value your intelligence, your determination, and your company more than I thought possible. Lily's expression softened. We barely know each other, Xavier. Then give us time to change that. He leaned forward, emboldened by the warmth in her eyes. Stay through the summer at least. Help me implement proper water management across the ranch. If by autumn you still wish to return to Helena, I won't try to convince you otherwise. And if I stay? The question hung between them, laden with unspoken implications. Xavier took a deep breath. If you stay, Miss Lily Calloway, I suspect you might discover that finding hidden springs isn't the only talent you possess. You might find you're equally skilled at reviving a man's heart that had begun to wither like the land around it. Lily's eyes widened at his candor, but a smile slowly spread across her face. That's quite a declaration from a man who looked at me with such distrust just days ago. I'm a quick study, Xavier replied, returning her smile. And when I'm wrong, I'm not too proud to admit it. One of your more admirable qualities, Lily said softly. Very well, Xavier Holloway. I'll stay through the summer. As for the autumn, we shall see what grows between us in the meantime. As July turned to August, the relationship between Xavier and Lily deepened alongside their work to secure the ranch's water future. They spent long days riding the property, identifying additional water sources and implementing Lily's conservation plans. The evening hours were filled with conversations that stretched late into the night, each discovering in the other a kindred spirit, despite their different backgrounds. Xavier learned that, beneath Lily's scientific expertise, lay a woman of deep compassion whose childhood on a Colorado ranch had instilled practical skills alongside her book learning. She could mend fences, deliver calves, and shoot with remarkable accuracy, talents that earned the respect of even his most traditional ranch hands. Lily discovered that Xavier's gruff exterior concealed a thoughtful mind that absorbed her scientific explanations eagerly, connecting them to his innate understanding of the land. His dedication to his workers touched her particularly. He refused to lay off a single man despite the financial strain of the drought, instead cutting his own comforts to ensure their wages were paid. By mid-August, the Double H Ranch had become a model of water management for the territory. 6 wells now provided reliable water for the cattle, strategically placed to optimize grazing rotation. Xavier had installed windmill pumps based on Lily's designs, reducing the manual labor required to access the deeper water sources. The transformation was most evident in Xavier himself. The desperate man Lily had first encountered had been replaced by someone confident and forward-thinking. His natural leadership, temporarily dimmed by the crisis, now shone brightly as he implemented innovations that extended beyond water management to other aspects of the ranch's operation. One warm evening, Xavier invited Lily for a ride to show her something special. They traveled to the highest point on his property, a ridge offering a panoramic view of the Double H's vast expanse. The setting sun bathed the landscape in golden light, softening even the drought-stricken areas. "It's beautiful," Lily said, gazing out over the land. "It's alive," Xavier replied, his voice filled with quiet wonder. "Thanks to you." Below them, cattle moved in the distance, healthier now than they had been in months. The windmills Lily had designed turned lazily in the evening breeze, pumping life, giving water from the hidden springs she had discovered. "Not just me," Lily corrected him. "We did this together. Your determination and your men's hard work made my knowledge useful." Xavier turned to face her, something resolute in his expression. "Lily, there's something I need to tell you." Her heart quickened at his serious tone. "What is it?" "I received a letter from the Agricultural Society yesterday. They're asking when you'll be moving on to the Sheffield Ranch. Apparently, they're facing water issues again." Lily nodded slowly. The letter's arrival had been inevitable, but she'd pushed the thought from her mind, reluctant to confront what it meant for her time at the Double H, and for her growing feelings for Xavier. "September was our agreement," she said quietly. "That's only 2 weeks away." "I know." Xavier's voice was steady, but his eyes revealed his struggle. "And I promise not to try to convince you to stay if you wish to leave." "But," Lily prompted, sensing there was more. "But I find I can't keep that promise." He took her hands in his touch sending warmth through her despite the cooling evening air. "Lily Calloway, I've fallen in love with you. The thought of you leaving tears at me worse than the drought ever did." Lily's breath caught. Though their growing closeness had made her own feelings increasingly clear to herself, neither had spoken so directly until now. "I know it's too soon," Xavier continued. "I know you have obligations, ambitions beyond this ranch. I'm not asking you to abandon them. But I am asking you to consider a future where the Double H is your home base rather than Helena, where your extraordinary knowledge could transform not just this ranch but the entire region, where we could build something lasting, together." Tears pricked at Lily's eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. She blinked them away, determined to think clearly despite the emotion swelling in her chest. "Xavier, you don't need to answer now," he interrupted gently. "Take the 2 weeks we have left. Think about what you want, what would fulfill you. All I ask is that you consider the possibility that what we've found together might be worth building upon." Lily nodded, unable to trust her voice. The truth was, she had already been contemplating this very question for weeks, watching as her professional satisfaction in saving the ranch had transformed into something far more personal. The connection she felt with Xavier went beyond their shared triumph over the drought. It was rooted in mutual respect, in complementary strengths, in the way his presence had come to feel like an essential part of her day. "I will consider it," she promised finally. "But Xavier, my work matters to me. The society has invested in my education, my tools. I have responsibilities. I would never ask you to abandon your work," Xavier assured her. "In fact, I've been thinking about how the Double H could serve as a demonstration site, a place where other ranchers could come to learn the water management techniques you've developed. You could still consult on other properties, still advance the scientific understanding you value so highly." The image he painted was seductive, a life where her professional ambitions and personal happiness might coexist rather than conflict, a base from which to work, a home to return to, and Xavier waiting when she did. "It's a beautiful vision," Lily admitted. "But there's something else we should discuss before I make any decisions." Xavier tensed slightly. "What's that?" "This." Lily stepped closer, eliminating the space between them, and kissed him. For a moment, Xavier stood frozen in surprise. Then his arms encircled her, pulling her against him as he returned her kiss with a fervor that left no doubt about his feelings. When they finally separated, both were breathing hard, the setting sun forgotten as they gazed at each other with new understanding. "Well," Xavier said hoarsely, That certainly clarifies some things. Lily laughed, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. I just wanted to make sure we were compatible in all the important ways before discussing our future further. A slow smile spread across Xavier's face. "And your assessment, Miss Calloway, highly promising," she replied, her scientific terminology belied by the warmth in her voice. "But I believe further investigation may be warranted." Xavier's laugh joined hers, echoing across the ridge. "I'm entirely amenable to continued research." As they rode back to the ranch house in the gathering dusk, a comfortable silence fell between them, filled with possibility rather than uncertainty. Something fundamental had shifted, and both knew that regardless of Lily's eventual decision, they had crossed a threshold from which there would be no returning to mere professional collaboration. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Xavier and Lily worked side by side implementing the final phase of her water management plan, creating detailed documentation so the system could be maintained after her departure if indeed she chose to leave. In the evenings, their relationship deepened. Long conversations by the fireplace revealed shared dreams and complementary values. Lily spoke of her ambition to write a comprehensive guide to water management for Western ranchers, combining scientific principles with practical applications. Xavier shared his vision for the Double H not just as a successful cattle operation, but as a model of sustainable ranching practices that could thrive even in drought conditions. As the deadline for Lily's decision approached, a letter arrived from the Agricultural Society. Xavier brought it to her with a carefully neutral expression, though she could sense his tension. "It's addressed to you," he said, handing her the envelope. "From Director Williamson." Lily broke the seal and scanned the contents, her expression shifting from concentration to surprise. "What is it?" Xavier asked, unable to contain his curiosity. "The Society is establishing a permanent research station in Helena," Lily explained. "They want me to head it to train others in water management techniques and coordinate drought response throughout the territory." She looked up at Xavier, her eyes wide. "It's everything I've worked toward," Xavier nodded, visibly struggling to hide his disappointment. "It's a remarkable opportunity. You've earned it." "There's more," Lily continued. "They mentioned the success at the Double H specifically. They propose using the ranch as a field demonstration site, with regular visits from me and eventually from other ranchers wanting to learn the techniques." Hope flickered in Xavier's eyes. "So you would still be connected to the ranch, even if based in Helena?" "Yes," Lily confirmed. "But Helena is 3 days' journey from here. Visits would be infrequent." They sat in silence, the letter between them like a tangible manifestation of the choice. Lily faced professional advancement or personal happiness, the culmination of her ambitions or the beginning of a new dream with Xavier. "What will you tell them?" Xavier finally asked. Lily took a deep breath. "I'm going to propose an alternative arrangement, which is that the research station be established here at the Double H rather than in Helena." Lily's voice grew stronger as she articulated the vision that had been forming in her mind. "The ranch already has the infrastructure, the wells, the windmills, the water management systems. It makes more sense to bring people here to see it in operation than to try to explain it theoretically in town." Xavier stared at her, hardly daring to hope. "And you think they'll agree to this?" "I don't know," Lily admitted, "but I can make a compelling case. The Society wants results: ranches saved, cattle preserved, agricultural methods modernized. I can achieve all that more effectively from here than from behind a desk in Helena." "And if they refuse?" Lily reached for his hand, her decision suddenly crystal clear. "Then I'll decline the position and propose establishing an independent consulting practice, Based here at the Double H. Xavier's fingers tightened around hers. You'd give up the society position, the prestige, the institutional support, for this ranch. For you, Lily smiled softly. Yes, Xavier, I've discovered something in these past weeks that matters more to me than professional recognition. I've found a partnership that makes both my work and my life richer. I've found a place where I belong. Xavier pulled her into his arms, his voice rough with emotion. I love you, Lily Calloway, more than this land, more than this ranch, and God knows I love them both fiercely. I love you too, Lily whispered against his chest. Enough to find a way forward that honors both our dreams. 2 days later, Lily sent her counter-proposal to the society. The response came with surprising speed, a telegram delivered to the Florence General Store and brought out to the ranch by a curious delivery boy. Xavier and Lily stood together on the porch as she opened the telegram with trembling fingers. Proposal accepted, stop, she read aloud. Research station at Double H approved, stop, quarterly reports, required, stop, funding authorized for equipment and assistant, stop, congratulations, stop. A whoop of joy escaped Xavier as he lifted Lily off her feet, spinning her around on the porch while she laughed with equal parts relief and delight. They agreed, she exclaimed, hardly able to believe it. We're going to build the research station here. You're staying, Xavier said, his voice filled with wonder. You're really staying. Lily cupped his face in her hands. I'm home, Xavier. I found my hidden spring just as surely as I found yours. 3 months later, on a crisp October day with the first hint of winter in the air, Xavier Holloway and Lily Calloway were married under the great oak tree near the main house of the Double H Ranch. The cattle, now healthy and thriving, grazed peacefully in the distance. The ranch hands, dressed in their Sunday best, stood alongside neighbors and colleagues from the Agricultural Society to witness the union. The drought had finally broken 2 weeks earlier, blessing the ceremony with a landscape beginning to show green again. But the newly installed wells continued to pump, testament to the couple's shared vision for drought resilience. As they exchanged vows, Xavier held Lily's hands tightly in his. I promise to cherish not just your heart but your mind, he vowed. To build our future on the foundation of mutual respect and shared purpose. To never forget that you saved more than my cattle when you showed me that hidden spring. You saved my hope, my future, my very reason for persevering. Lily's eyes shimmered with tears as she responded. I promise to stand beside you through drought and plenty, to combine my knowledge with your wisdom, to create something here that will outlast us both. You've given me not just your love but a place to put down roots, a purpose greater than personal achievement. After the celebration, as twilight settled over the ranch, Xavier led Lily to the ridge where he had first declared his love. Below them, lanterns glowed at the ranch house and the newly constructed research station, a symbol of their united vision. Happy? Xavier asked, his arm around her waist. Completely, Lily answered, leaning into his embrace. Though I do have one piece of news I've been waiting for the right moment to share. Xavier looked down at her, curious. More good news from the society? No. Lily took his hand and placed it gently over her stomach. Different news entirely. In about 7 months, the Double H will have a new resident. Xavier's eyes widened, a mixture of shock and joy spreading across his face. A baby, you're certain? Lily nodded, her smile radiant in the fading light. Dr. Perkins confirmed it yesterday. It seems our partnership is bearing fruit in more ways than one. Xavier pulled her close, overwhelmed with emotion. I never imagined when I watched my cattle dying that the future held such promise, that finding water would lead to finding you, and now a child. Life from the hidden spring, Lily murmured. It seems fitting. As darkness settled over the Montana landscape, Xavier and Lily Holloway stood together on the ridge, their silhouettes merging into one against the star-filled sky. Below them, the Double H Ranch spread out in all directions, no longer a place of desperation but one of innovation and hope, a legacy they would build together, and someday pass to the child now growing beneath Lily's heart. 5 years later, the Double H Ranch had transformed beyond recognition. The research station Lily had established had grown into the premier water management training center in the territory, drawing visitors from as far away as California and Texas to learn her methods. Xavier's cattle operation had expanded, his herds now among the healthiest and most productive in Montana. The irrigation systems they had designed together allowed for hay cultivation even in dry years, providing feed security that neighboring ranches envied and increasingly emulated. On a bright spring morning, Xavier stood on the porch of their expanded home, watching as Lily conducted a training session for a group of ranchers near the main well. Beside her stood their 4-year-old son, Samuel, named for Xavier's father, his small face serious as he mimicked his mother's gestures explaining the windmill mechanism. Their daughter, Emma, just 2 years old, played contentedly at Xavier's feet, arranging small stones in patterns only she understood. Her dark hair and hazel eyes were mirror images of her mother's, though her determined personality seemed inherited directly from her father. As Xavier watched his family, a profound contentment filled him. The drought years had faded to memory, replaced by seasons of growth and achievement. The hidden spring Lily had discovered had become just one of many water sources they had developed together, creating a network of sustainability that had made the Double H famous throughout the territory. Lily concluded her demonstration and, catching sight of Xavier on the porch, waved Samuel toward him. The boy ran eagerly, his small boots raising dust. "Papa," he called. "Mama showed the men how the water moves under the ground. It's like magic, but it's science." Xavier scooped his son up, grinning at the perfect description of Lily's work. "That's right, Samuel. Your mama knows how to find water where others see only dust. It's the most valuable knowledge there is in this country." Lily joined them, accepting Emma into her arms as the little girl reached for her. "I think our son might follow in my professional footsteps," she said with a smile. "He's already asking questions about aquifer depth that I didn't consider until college." "With your brains and my stubbornness, our children will be unstoppable," Xavier replied, slipping an arm around her waist. As the visiting ranchers departed, filled with new knowledge and plans for their own properties, Xavier and Lily walked together toward the ridge that had become their special place. Samuel ran ahead, while Emma drowsed against her mother's shoulder. The view had changed over the years. Where once brown, desiccated grass had stretched to the horizon, now carefully managed pastures showed healthy growth. The windmills Lily had designed dotted the landscape, their blades turning lazily in the spring breeze. In the distance, cattle grazed contentedly, their health a testament to the transformation of the Double H. "You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't come that day?" Xavier asked quietly. "If you hadn't been sent to survey the drought's effects?" Lily considered the question. "Sometimes. I imagine you would have eventually found water on your own. You're too determined to have failed completely." "Perhaps," Xavier acknowledged, "but I might have lost everything before that discovery came, and I certainly would never have found you." "The Agricultural Society's finest achievement," Lily teased. "Matchmaking disguised as drought relief." Xavier laughed, pulling her close. 5 years, and still every day I wake up grateful for that hidden spring and for the woman who showed me where to find it." And I'm grateful for the stubborn rancher who trusted science enough to dig where I pointed, Lily replied, leaning into him. Even if it took some convincing. As they stood together on the ridge, their children playing nearby, Xavier and Lily Holloway gazed out over the thriving ranch that had nearly been lost, the land they had saved together, and transformed into something greater than either could have accomplished alone. The Double H stood as a testament to what could grow from the most desperate circumstances when knowledge joined with perseverance, when science combined with grit, when two people found in each other not just love but a shared vision worth building. The hidden spring had saved more than cattle. It had created a legacy that would flow for generations to come.